Hello and welcome in to this week's book club episode of Star Wars Aftermath Empire's End. If you're not familiar with the series, basically we've been getting into a book a couple of chapters at a time, really delving into the themes and happenings of those particular chapters. If you would like to join us from the beginning of this book, which is the third book in the Aftermath trilogy, go ahead and click here and it'll take you back to where we started. But as I said, this is the third book in the trilogy, and if you would like to join us from from the beginning of our discussion on the trilogy, going back to Aftermath 1, you can click here, and it'll take you all the way back, just like the Wayback Machine. But today, this week, we are discussing chapters 21 and 22. We're going to be spending a lot of time on 21, as it was a pretty hefty chapter, as I like to say. This chapter finds Rax in his observatory. So we've been seeing a little bit from Rax here and there, hearing a little bit more about his plan that he's been very, very vague on, and now we're in this fabled observatory. We don't really know what's going on there. The people trying to find Rax certainly don't know what's going on there. We know that this is presumably the spot that Palpatine left Rax to defend when he was a small child, and this is kind of like the point of the whole story. Everything's kind of coming to this location. We just don't know what's up with it yet. So Rax is there, and he sees that Sloane and Brenton have gotten in this fight with Numa, and that they're hiding from the turbo lasers that we saw last week. Now, Rax does not know who's with Sloane. He knows that there's somebody with her, but doesn't recognize it as Brenton Wexley. So that's an important thing to note, that there's been this kind of dramatic irony throughout the last couple of chapters, and we'll see a little bit more with that between Rax and before him with Jazz, where we know that it's Brenton with Sloane, and nobody who would recognize Brenton has seen him yet. It is at this point that Rax wants Hux, and this is Brindle Hux, the father of Armitage Hux, so the dad of the Hux that we see in the sequel trilogy. Rax is basically like, get your people ready, and if they are ready, I will let you know all of the things, and if they're not ready, you're done, basically. So it's kind of like this all or nothing deal. And Rax talks about how Hux has been alienated from everybody else in his group, that he's, somewhat of an outsider, and it made me realize how much Rax likes finding these kind of alienated and desperate people, right? That he's lost Sloane, and he thought Sloane was somebody who was kind of alienated and desperate. And it's true to a degree, but not to the degree that Rax thought, and not to the degree that made her as malleable as he wanted her to be. But basically, Rax is trying to find these people that have a lot of drive, and a lot of will, and a lot of ambition, but that will still ultimately serve him. And he's trying to strike that balance. And he thought he had that with Sloane, and he thought for sure that she would see the grandeur of his plan and join him in life debt, and that didn't happen. And so now he's kind of gone to Hux, who's definitely a couple steps down from Sloane, but has that same kind of drive, but is way more malleable. And it's just interesting how Rax keeps finding this particular type of person, and I can't help but wonder if not only is it because this particular type of person serves Rax, but also if this is not the type of person Rax was when Palpatine found him. And to the degree that he seems to idolize and worship Palpatine, at least to the extent that he's still trying to fulfill whatever this plan is, a couple years later for a man who's dead, supposedly. I guess that's TBD, but still. Makes me think that Rax is kind of trying to find other people like him, and kind of looking for those similar beginnings. We jump over in the same chapter to Jazz and Nora's perspective. Jazz and Nora are also watching Brenton and Sloane. Nora, of course, would recognize Brenton, but can't see him. And Nora and Jazz kind of have this continuation of a conversation that they've been kind of kicking the can down the road on, which is Jazz asks Nora if she wants justice or revenge. Because now they're going to go down and get Sloane. And when they get Sloane, they can either kill Sloane and get revenge, or they could try to capture Sloane and get justice. And basically the idea is, if they just want to kill Sloane, they can do it safely by flying past her. But if they want justice, they have to risk their lives and get close, because these turbo laser guns are still out there. And Nora plays it off is she doesn't know what she wants. And it's interesting how calm Nora seems here, especially when she's been so ragey and driven by only the adrenaline of revenge up until this point, which is something we will visit here in a second. For those of you who read the chapter, you know how well that goes. But the other kind of interesting thing here is that Jazz figures out that Sloane isn't in charge of anything. You know, if Sloane was still Grand Admiral Sloane, she wouldn't be hiding behind a pillar between a turbo laser and a rabbit hut. And how that kind of changes things, and they decide still ultimately to go for Sloane, because if she's not in charge of anything, they might be able to tell them who is. But it is nice to see Jazz kind of figuring that out, and them starting to realize that they thought they were chasing their true enemy, and they're maybe chasing their personal enemy, but not their true enemy. Then we hop over to Sloane and Brenton's perspective, where they're discussing who's watching them, what their predicament is, what the rumors are in the desert. Basically, they're trying to figure out what is Rax wanting to protect so badly. Is it a weapon? Is it a ship? What is going on that it would require all of this secrecy. While they're having this discussion, that's when Jazz and Nora fly in. At this point, Sloane does not know that it's Jazz and Nora, but we know that that's the shuttle that is coming in. Sloane wants to take it. So at this point, Sloane's like, okay, this could be our way out, regardless of why the shuttle is coming. We jump back to Nora and Jazz, and here we learn that the real reason why Nora was so calm is she's kind of decided, and now she's driven again, and that she wants revenge. And rather than just getting the safe revenge by shooting Sloane where she stands from a distance, she wants to get up close and personal and kill Sloane up close and personal. So she does not just want revenge, but she needs it. Like, that's the level of which she needs to, like, go in. She's really hit this kind of irrational point. She is taking Bones with her for some backup, but it's just this idea of, you know, she's so hyper focused, and at this point is they get close and she sees what's going on, and that's when she finally sees who this other person is with Sloane, and that it's Brenton. And Brenton is like a gut punch to her. Why is Brenton there? Is he captured? Is he in league with her still? What could be going on? But it's at this point that some Imperial ships, who are Hux's Imperial ships, fly in, and they're forced to turn around. And if you, like, I thought that Nora was as raw as she possibly could be, and now she's even more raw, because now she was this close to the woman that she so desperately wants to murder for revenge, and this woman is with her husband, whom she thought she lost, and one of the reasons why she wants to kill this woman, and, you know, all of these things are swirling, and of course, instead of dealing with it, Jazz is flying away, because Jazz doesn't want to deal with the Imperials. Sloane, at this point, realizes that she's charged again with purpose. So we had seen her at a point where she no longer thought she could have her empire back, she was ready to give up, and that she wanted to basically just get revenge on Rax, and that was going to be good enough. You know, she was driven in a very similar way to how Nora was. And it's at this point when Sloane sees that that shuttle was there, even though she watches it fly off now, and she at this point in time does not know that Nora and Jazz were on it, which means Brenton doesn't know. Now these other Imperial ships are coming, and she realizes she's gonna, you know, face someone from the Empire. She realizes she is driven, that she does want her empire back, that stopping Rax is not enough, that she wants her empire. We've kind of seen her hit her lowest point, seen her bottom out, and then this is kind of Sloane on the rise again in this scene, and this scene is absolutely incredible and powerful to see her come around on that. She knows Rax is coming, she's preparing to face Rax. As the troopers come out of the shuttles, Nema attacks. She's like a monster in a cage. She's just destroying stormtroopers. They're shooting her down. It just becomes this big thing. After this exchange, it's this kind of meeting we've been wanting to see again for a long time, is Sloane and Rax meeting again, and their encounter was probably my favorite passage I've read in this book so far. Just, there's no falseness in how they're interacting, there's no, like, smoke and mirrors, there's no true manipulating, it's just like this cold, maskless exchange of these two people that, you know, Sloane never really liked Rax. Rax feels utterly betrayed by Sloane, and just to see how they interact with each other, I don't know, is just these two figureheads. And there's something really intense too, because they're supposedly on the same side. You know, it's one thing to see the good guy face down the bad guy, but to see two people that are presumably the bad guys, but you feel more for one than another, just the same-sidedness, I think, adds something to this confrontation that would be different if it was, say, Nora meeting Rax, other than the fact that Nora doesn't know that Rax exists at this point. But Rax is as crazy and Rax-like as Rax ever is. He says he wants to keep her alive because he needs an audience. She uses this to her advantage and uses it to keep Brenton alive. He was going to just kill Brenton, and she's like, no, he's a rebel. You should keep him alive to force him to blah, 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 and Rax does it. And Sloane is not really doing this out of some kind of vindictiveness. She still thinks that Brenton can help her, and she just wanted Brenton to not be killed on the spot. So instead, she plays on the pride of Rax to keep Brenton alive. And then the end of the chapter is them getting carted away, and Sloane spits on Rax's uniform, which is stark white, stark red emerald white, basically. And she, you know, is in a desert. She doesn't have fluids to make spit. So it's this very, very dramatic moment between the two of them. And it's, as much as you're seeing Sloane captured and less free than she's been in a long time in this book, you can tell that, like, this is, like, Sloane is back to being Sloane, and it's going to be a wild ride between these two characters. And then chapter 22 is pretty quick and simple. After everyone clears out, Jazz and Nora come back. They look at the caravan wreckage. The turbo lasers are off for the time because Jazz is flying around with clearance codes, so the Empire doesn't know that they would be, you know, bad people in the Empire's perspective. They wouldn't know them to be enemies, so they're able to kind of come in. Turbo lasers aren't focused on them anymore, and they're kind of able to look at the wreckage. They find out that Nima's actually alive. Nima gets her voice box going again, and they work out a deal that they will help Nima not die from her injuries, and in return, Nima will now get them to the observatory, and it's just kind of a sign, right? Like, right now, Jazz is basically the reason why anything is happening at all, and she's kind of keeping this two-person team together. Nora is even more broken at this point for the reasons that we said before. So basically, as we get to the end of part 3, the story's twisting and turning and shifting and reversing, and it's bound to do that several times more from here. We're nearing the end of part 3. We're about halfway through the book, so we're going to go ahead and finish part 3 for next week. And that's going to look like chapters 23 and 24, so this is another 2-chapter week. It's the same thing, one really big long chapter, and then one really short chapter. That will get us to the end of part 3, and we'll start part 4 after that. So if this, you know, shifting of alliances and predicaments is not how this part ends, imagine where this next chapter is going to leave us. But those are my thoughts this week. Please leave a comment letting me know what you think of the story so far, what fun things you noticed, that sort of thing. Love to know your thoughts. If you're not already, please follow us on the various social medias. It would be great hearing from you, talking to you, engaging with you about this story in general. And I will talk to you guys next week.